As the greatest battle of the century between the strongest fraud in history, Jean, and the Queen of Lament Xianyun came to a standstill. They were about to draw out 120% of their full potential, until an innocent onlooker, Xiao, asked Jean,
"So who's stronger, her or you?"
Well, if Xianyun regained her grouping, she might cause me a little trouble.
But would you lose?
Nah, I'd win.
I was wrong, guys. Xianyun is actually Dea tier. The fact that Jean can group with her hold E, and the fact that she enables full damage on human enemies. This makes Jean very clearly the better character, and Xianyun is now the worst limited 5-star we have. I've let you all down. Well, anyways, hello there, Flip here, and today we have probably my last video on Xianyun for a while, unless she gets any more major changes. And in this video, we're going to directly address all of the flaws or issues players have with Xianyun's kit in its current state. But before we do that, as always, if at any point during the video you're entertained or informed, make sure to drop a like and even consider subscribing, as I talk on various topics regarding Genshin's meta, and I'll try to keep you updated. So from the changes that came from the time my video dropped to now, Xianyun pretty much lost the grouping on her skill, and in return her plunge flat buff was further increased. No matter how many times you use her skill, you generate 5 particles, reducing her field time requirements. Her passive was changed to give you some crit rate, which is nice, but like and they also nerfed her initial healing and made her overtime healing stronger. Yeah, not gonna lie, I don't get that one at all, but let them cook. To make this distinction clear, I do not like the fact that she lost her grouping personally, but it doesn't have that much of an impact on her actual standings as a unit. Nor is this something that makes her bad now. And trying to be as objective as possible, I do think it's a buff overall. But this does make it harder to ignore her plunge buffing and enabling niche. Now, talking about Xianyun's problems, I feel a lot of people misunderstood what I was trying to convey in my last video about Xianyun for 2 main reasons. 1, not making a distinction between character strength and pull value, and 2, not understanding that plunges are inherently very strong attacks. Let's address this one at a time. One of the main comments I got is that if you have Jean, you shouldn't pull for the crane, and I agree. I said this towards the end of my video. Everyone else, if you have a Jean, I don't think it's necessary to also then have Xianyun, especially if there are already resources into your Jean. But just because the sex bird's pull value is basically non-existent if you have Jean, that doesn't mean that Xianyun is weak because of that. Yai is stronger than Keqing in aggravate teams, but if your goal is to play an aggravate team that is competent and you already have a Keqing, then there is no reason based on pull value to then get Yai, but that doesn't correlate to Yai then being weak because of this. Pull value is very subjective as everyone's accounts have different things at their disposal. The same way someone can have a Jean, you could also just not have a Jean. And if there are Furina teams you want to try out with an Onimo unit but can't due to not having the soccer mom, then do you just wait idly on the not guaranteed chance to pull her when you can secure Xianyun, who is a side grade and also enables a very strong playstyle? Speaking of which, another common thing I've seen throw around is that she's only good if you're plunge enabling. That is first off not true, because she's virtually the same as Jean in Furina teams regardless if you plunge or not. And also she can hold a Thurling Tails and Raiden double Hydra teams where she's an upgrade because Raiden has no attack buffs in that team, hurting her damage output a lot, making Cloud Retainer a noticeable upgrade there. And I find it funny that people use the she's only good for plunging as a gotcha as a slight to her strength, but the ignorance comes from the fact that plunges are very strong attacks. If all characters were able to plunge unconditionally in their combos, most of them would. We just did not really have the means to do so. And from my calculations on her flat buff, Xianyun is adding 50% or more damage to your plunges, which is actually fucking ludicrous. Plunges are already strong, and Xianyun makes them even more worth it to incorporate them for you. So since my sister wants to interrupt my videos, I'd like to know if she wants to add anything on. Leah, do you want to say anything?
I want chickens.
Okay. So no, this isn't just, actually she only works for Diluc and Zhao. Gaming is a 4-star who's looking to be a top tier carry. Hu Tao, even when only adding a few plunges to her combos, so you can consistently vape all of them, is looking at increase. Jaystone, a great theory crafter you should check out, is also looking at the possibility for it being an upgrade to Rio. Oh my fucking god. Any melee character with C6 Bennett and Furina becomes, funnily enough, a strong plunge carry. That is how much stronger she makes plunges and how much stronger they can be when amped with reactions. And there are even more possibilities being looked at outside of Furina teams, like Yai crushing enemies with her massive ass on no ICD electro plunges. There also seems to be this idea that you're just going to be spamming plunges for some reason. When that's not the case, you are simply adding some plunges onto your combos, in addition to your normal gameplay loop. So it won't be as disorientating as Zhao gameplay. If you don't personally like using plunges, that is your prerogative, I can't do anything to change that. But if you say that you don't like plunges, therefore she's a bad character, Never cook again. On my account, I don't really use Dendro teams, especially Bloom teams. Take a look at the characters I built. My account is all about going in raw because I've never experienced it. I also don't like those Dendro teams or Bloom teams. By the logic of Xianyun Doom posters, I should be able to just call Nahida Dea tier, right? Because I don't care for Dendro teams. Do you see how much of a non-argument that is? People were calling me biased for defending Xianyun, but the argument of I don't like plungers equals plungers bad is more of a biased argument than anything I brought up. The next thing I want to address is a minor point that I thought was funny, because people just decided to selectively hear what I said about Thrilling Tales. TTDS on Xianyun isn't necessarily as good as it is on HP scalers, as it has low base attack and its substat is HP, so it doesn't do anything for her plunge buff or healing, on top of not helping her ER. But in my video, when I introduced TTDS as a supporting option, I pretty clearly state that it's only on Jawa Raiden teams. So when I say TTDS is a good weapon for Xianyun, most likely I'm saying it's good because it can be used really well on Jawa Raiden teams. I admit I'm not particularly the best at articulating myself. As for me, if it doesn't add or change my point, I don't think it's worth doting on, which is why I don't explain specifically why it's good on Jawa Raiden teams. But like, reading some of the comments, it would make it out like I called TTDS Xianyun's definitive best weapon in every single case. If anything, I undersold TTDS because I calculated its healing with a 200 energy requirement, despite the fact that on Jawa and Raiden teams you realistically won't go over like 150 ER. Raiden is already getting a ludicrous amount of damage bonus on Furina, Yolan, Jean teams. Sacrificing some damage bonus from not maxing fanfare for TTDS is much more of a worthwhile trade-off. And this is the same case for Zhao from all the damage bonuses he receives too. Before going into my final thoughts on this discourse, the last thing I see extremely doom posted is Xianyun's AoE potential, because her plunge buff is single target, and I actually do think it's extremely funny and doesn't make that much sense to give her a plunge buff that is single target when plunging is an AoE attack. But like, can we talk about how the fuck this would work? As far as I know, plunges all hit enemies at the same time, so there has to be some sort of system for this to make sense. Yai's turrets have random targeting, and in Aggravate, her AoE damage can vastly change depending on the turret's targeting. ICD is different per enemy, so if all enemies have a quicken aura, and Yai's turrets continue attacking different enemies, that drastically changes how good the team feels in AoE. For some reason, people just assume that if we have Hilitrol 1 over here and Hilitrol 2, that Xianyun's buff over multiple plunges will just affect Hilitrol 1, but it could also have this randomness attached to it, and if over the course of multiple plunges the distribution is somewhat close, then theoretically the AoE damage is pretty much the same per target. There's also a chance that the plunge is for the closest enemy to the character, and if that's the case, that's a factor you're able to control, so we'll see. Either way, even though her buff is single target, it most likely won't translate that exact way, if you get what I mean. Overall, I think the reason for the visceral hate for Xianyun and her kit is because she isn't causal with a Vijay and healing, and honestly, I can understand that. When I first heard the rumors that Xianyun was a plunge support, I was about to grab the Blades of Chaos, drop in your Spear Leviathan Axe, and damn near close Ragnarok on the Hoyoverse building. I wanted her to just be Jean with buffing and grouping. Again, I'd rather take the first rendition of her kit rather than the crit rate bullshit they gave us. But at the same time, just looking at the info and how much she buffs plunges and how plunges are actually pretty damn strong, despite what I wanted her to be, I can still acknowledge that her kit is good. Can she be used as universally as Kazuha or Yolan? No, but she's still best in slot for quite a few characters, and is not only best in slot but makes some of those meme characters actually competitive and top tier. Deluke. And people are somehow comparing this character to Dale, like can we be fucking for real? Can we stop kidding ourselves? But like, that's all I have to say. Xianyun is getting her last beta changes on Monday, I think, so we'll see if she gets buffed or nerfed, and either way we'll also see at her release how strong of a character she is. And if I'm wrong, I'll gladly look like the biggest clown ever. And with that, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like, subscribe, and comment your thoughts on Xianyun, as I'd love to hear and respond to almost every single comment. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you guys on the flip side. Peace.